Well, a little bit of a different day on Tuesday than on Monday. Huh, Bengals fans? How's it going, everybody? I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. I hope you are all doing well. You should be after what transpired on Tuesday. First part of the day, not so great. They lost out on a couple of different linebackers. Apparently, they got into a bidding war with the Raiders for Kwiatkowski, and they also lost out on Joe Schobert. I think they were also in the Corey Littleton sweepstakes a little bit there. Got a little too rich for their blood at the end, and we said, "Up, here we go." Myself included. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, I was a big complainer. I was a big complainer on Tuesday, that's for sure, at the first part of the day when they lost out on these linebackers, when they basically decided this is too rich for our blood for this position group, and in outside free agency, we can't do it. Then a few hours later, probably less than 2 hours later, the Bengals end up signing defensive tackle DJ Reader from the Houston Texans, a big acquisition, probably one of the biggest in terms of talent, in terms of contracts, one of the biggest free agency signings the Bengals have ever made, and I guess biggest in terms of actual physical size of the human too. But they sign him to a massive deal, and then they follow that up with Trae Waynes, the cornerback from Minnesota, coming over on another 3-year deal. Pretty expensive deal there as well. Truth be told, just under $100 million in total money potentially in those contracts. So big deals, big improvements by the Cincinnati Bengals in the later part of the day. They missed out at the linebacker position, but beefed up the defensive line, beefed up the secondary. We knew defense was going to be a focus. Lou Anarumo made no bones about it, the fact that he wanted more players on defense. The Bengals got decimated at various spots, really all over the roster, but on defense at the end of the year, you had both William Jackson and Dre Kirkpatrick on IR. You had Darnay Dennard miss the first 6 games on the PUP list as a cornerback. Guys were in and out on the defensive line, and because Ryan Glasgow and some injuries to Carl Lawson, that sort of thing, you're forcing guys at the end of their career, Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap, to take a few more snaps than maybe it would be ideal. And you're kind of forcing them into a higher volume of plays than you would like. You would like to have that rotation, keep everybody fresh. The Bengals didn't have that last year. So now they've got DJ Reader to come up and really beef up what they're trying to do here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit, give you some information on DJ Reader. This is courtesy of Pro Football Focus, namely the Bengals account on Twitter. The Bengals signed DJ Reader, who is Pro Football Focus's number 2 free agent interior defensive lineman and the number 33 overall free agent in this class, only 25 years old, 36 pressures in 2019. So a very, very valuable player, one of the biggest players, biggest acquisitions the Bengals have made in outside free agency, a guy who, has done well for the Houston Texans, has moved on, and now will be, helping out the Bengals on defense, and hopefully, that all of a sudden becomes a very formidable defensive line, especially with, Carl Lawson in there, Sam Hubbard coming into his own and bettering his rookie season sack total. He's a solid edge player, little inconsistent, but I think that comes with youth. So you've got some guys there. Then you beef up the interior of the line. Maybe, you mix in, you've got Andrew Brown, who is a versatile player. Ryan Glasgow's coming back from injury. So you've got a lot of versatility and a lot of different players there that can potentially help you out. And just a big move. One of the biggest contracts and one of the biggest moves in free agency in general this year by any team. So a very good move by the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of money, but very good. Then you move on to Trae Waynes. Trae Waynes is the other big acquisition. Maybe, definitely not as popular of a of a move for the Cincinnati Bengals just because of the overall talent level and the scope of the contract. It pays Trae Waynes, basically it's front loaded for about $20 million. And really, I think that this, not only the Bengals in general, but that is how teams have to operate in free agency. You got to front load some of these things because oftentimes, not saying this will be the case with Trae Waynes, but we see teams go wild in free agency, and then a lot of these players don't finish out the entire length of the contract that they signed. So, to get some of these higher end players here, that's what the Bengals had to do. You see here from, again, Pro Football Focus, the Cincinnati Bengals account on Twitter. The Bengals aren't done. Trae Waynes heading to Cincinnati. So he's a good run defender, 74.5 run defense grade, averaging over the his first 4 seasons, by the way. This is his second contract as a pro. 60-plus coverage grade in the last 3 seasons. You wanted to see more out of that, a little higher grade from the coverage standpoint. But, an all-around pretty solid player, I would say, and we'll get to this in a moment. Probably a younger, maybe a little faster, and probably a little more highly talented player than Dre Kirkpatrick if the plan is to replace him on the boundary. We'll see what happens there. We'll talk about that in a second. But 2 monster moves. I think it's about $95 million that these 2 contracts put up, for these 2 players to solidify their defense. And, I think it helps. I think it really helps what the Bengals are trying to do. The other thing, guys, there's some talk that cornerback could be very early in this year's draft for the Cincinnati Bengals. And you look at it, I put out a tweet earlier today. William Jackson is a free agent next year. Dre Kirkpatrick is a free agent the year after that, if they hang on to him. You've got Darius Phillips, who's set to be a free agent, I believe, in 21. I mean, you've got a lot of guys whose contracts are coming up here. And whether you are still looking at the draft to get a cornerback within the first couple of rounds, or you're looking to, backload that position group to help soften the blow of losing some of these guys, the Waynes move is a good move. And for the immediate future, whether money tells us, and the fact that they were aggressive in getting him tells us that he would be the number 2 guy, even if they keep Dre Kirkpatrick. You've got Jackson, you've got Waynes on the outside. Waynes as a number 2 corner is not too bad for an NFL team. Jackson, your number 1 guy. And then if you're forced to kind of tinker around and keep Kirkpatrick, you can do that. He's your number 3 corner. You've got Darius Phillips, who they like, an athletic guy who made a lot of turnovers. I believe he had 3 or 4 interceptions last year. You have, BW Webb maybe to help you out and BW Webb as your 4th, 5th corner is much better than BW Webb as your starting corner, right? And BW Webb was forced into starting roles late in the season with injuries to Kirkpatrick, injuries to Jackson, and Dennard kind of having to be moved around a bit. So, BW Webb did not play very well last year, but he didn't play very well last year because he was forced in a higher profile role than what they had envisioned for him. So all of a sudden now he's your 4th, 5th corner. That's a pretty deep group. You've got playmaking ability from Phillips. Waynes is potentially an athletic, a good player, potentially an upgrade on the outside, at least health-wise too. An upgrade from Kirkpatrick. You've got Jackson, who has shown flashes of elite play at times. So, all of a sudden that corner group, the Bengals love those first-round corners, don't they? They love the first-round corners, whether they draft them themselves or they bring them in via free agency. They love having high-end talent at the cornerback group. And they I think a lot of that is because they do like to play man coverage on the outside. They don't like to do a lot of double teams if they don't have to. So they like these press man physical corners that can also run. And they like their corners to be able to contribute in the run game. They, as weird as that sounds, they like guys who can tackle. That's why they loved Leon Hall for a long time. They like guys who can get their nose in there. That's why they like Dennard. Dennard was a physical guy who can go in there and play against the run blitz, the quarterback, and all of that. So they like guys like that. Waynes has shown a penchant to be able to tackle and contribute in the run game, albeit limited from the cornerback position. So with that, the Bengals did lose a player, and that is Darnay Dennard. I mentioned him earlier. He signed a somewhat surprisingly low deal in free agency to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It sounded like it was never really going to materialize for both sides, meaning the Bengals and Dennard, coming to an agreement this time around. If you remember last year, he really kind of put himself out there, thought he was going to get a big deal. He didn't. He came back on a 1-year rental deal for the Bengals, ended up on the PUP list, which really hurt the defense from the get-go. And now he's moved on to the Jaguars. I believe it was 3 years, $13.5 million. So not a very big deal for him going forward. I think it was about $6 or $8 million guaranteed. So not a huge deal for Dennard, but he is moving on, as are the Bengals. For me, Dennard is always kind of a what if. They never really gave him a full shot on the outside. On the outside for a boundary corner position, a starting corner position. They really kind of put him in the slot where he played very well. The other issue with Dennard, not a lot of turnovers forced in his career, and health. This team needs guys that are healthy, and unfortunately Dennard was not always available for the team as they went forward with seasons. And missing, you got a 1-year rental deal and you're missing almost half the season right off the bat with an injury that's not going to really play well when it comes time to renegotiate some deals. So we'll see what goes on there. But right now, as it currently stands, Bengals cornerback group, with the addition of Waynes and the departure of Dennard, you've got William Jackson, you've got Dre Kirkpatrick, you've got Trae Waynes, you have B.W. Webb, Darius Phillips, and they re-signed a couple of guys. They didn't tender guys, some other guys that were restricted free agents. So more or less, those are kind of the top part of your cornerback group right now. So Tony Brown is the other cornerback that's kind of on there that they are high on. They re-signed him, so that's the other guy. But no Dennard. We'll see what happens with Kirkpatrick. We'll talk about that and other things in just a second. Again, I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a much better day to join today, to talk about today, as opposed to the first day. And when we say first day of free agency, this is all the tampering period, by the way, where you can kind of set up contracts in place. And now, once the league year officially starts on Thursday, you can sign them and get things to be official. All that good stuff. So, a lot to digest on Tuesday. 2 big moves, significant moves by the Cincinnati Bengals, both on defense, and DJ Reader, the defensive tackle from Houston, and Trae Waynes, the cornerback from Minnesota. Both should provide marginal, if not, marginal being Waynes, and exponential help on defense in the form of Reader. That was a big pickup for the Cincinnati Bengals, but both seem to be solid additions to the defense. Again, I'm Anthony Cosenza. If you're new to this program, you can get it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Megaphone. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and get all of our content there. All of our stuff is on CincyJungle.com. You can get our, all of our stuff is out there on all kinds of different platforms. So download it, subscribe to the channels, get the content, be notified when we take the air. Sometimes it's kind of last minute, like today. We kind of did the impromptu thing. There was some big news, so we decided to take the air. So get informed, subscribe to our channels, leave us a rating, and check out our weekly show. Myself, John Sheeran, another Cincy Jungle contributor. We do a weekly show. We've got interviews with players. We've break down all the news notes and go from the Cincinnati Bengals from all kinds of different angles. So check out our weekly show, and also check out the other shows on the SB Nation channel of podcasts, Orange is the New Black from Ace Boogie and Zim Hude, as well as Matt Minnick's Chalk Talk, where he breaks down film of the Cincinnati Bengals, rookie prospects, etc. Going to be here for a few more minutes talking about what may be ahead for the Cincinnati Bengals now that they tagged AJ Green, they tendered 4 restricted free agents, including Alex Redmond, Cethan Carter, and Brandon Wilson, Josh Tupou. Those are the 4 that they tendered. They did not tender 4 others. They signed DJ Reader, as I mentioned at the onset of the show, the Houston defensive tackle. They signed Trae Waynes, the cornerback from Minnesota. Now, what is on tap here for the Cincinnati Bengals? They lost out on a number of different linebackers. There is no doubt that this team needs linebacker help. With some of the bigger names that they did not win out on, they may look to go back to Nick Vigil. That's been pretty quiet on that front because, the Joe Schoberts and Corey Littleton's, as expected, got most of the praise, most of the buzz. So we'll see what happens, but that may be the Bengals go back to. Nick Vigil did play well towards the end of the year and could be a nice rotational piece in the linebacker group, but I would not say that I would be fully comfortable with a high-profile role for Nick Vigil if he was to come back, but a rotational piece, a guy who can help you out in pass coverage a little bit, but you would still need additional help in the draft, high-end talent in the draft, probably second, third round type of talent in the draft if you're able to get it, if that's the route you go. There are other players like, I believe, Andrews Pete is the guard from the Saints. He's a guy that I believe is still available. That may be a route the Bengals look to help out the offensive line. That may be an area that the Bengals look to shore up. I don't know that the tackle market, Brian Bulaga is now gone. I don't know that the Bengals are going to look for, a tackle to compete potentially with Bobby Hart. They seem, and they have been putting out the message that they are more comfortable with the offensive line than the fans, the pundits, the critics, the media. They are more comfortable with the state of their offensive line. Maybe some help at the guard positions. They like that Jonah Williams has come back. Even with the departure of Cordy Glenn, they like the state of this offensive line. So we'll see. We'll see what that looks like. Like I said, Andrews Pete from the Saints is a guy that maybe they look at, kind of a mid-level player, perhaps a marginal upgrade on the offensive line at some spots, depending on how you look at it. Then, you've got the potential for the team to free up some space in the form of Dre Kirkpatrick, who's set to make about $9 million or so this year. And of course the Andy Dalton deal. The Andy Dalton deal was starting to that was a storyline throughout much of the day on Tuesday where, you've got Tom Brady saying goodbye to the Patriots. That destination is open. Chicago has yet to strike a deal with any other quarterback there. Miami, who knows what they're doing? They've been just wheeling and dealing. So they may be, if they're not overly enamored with Tua or Justin Herbert, they may be, a team that's out there. Tampa Bay is now grabbing Tom Brady, it seems. Indianapolis is grabbing Phillip Rivers, it would seem. So, there are a lot of different wheels in motion here. It's also hard to see a team potentially eating that entire $17+ million cap figure for Andy Dalton. That may be the sticking point, especially for a high, a second round pick, a third round pick. That may be a sticking point in these trade talk negotiations where a team doesn't want to take on the full salary and give up a high pick. They may be willing to give up a high pick, but the Bengals absorb some of that cap hit. It depends on what is happening there. Now, the Bengals have made it known that they will be getting the Dalton contract off the books one way or the other, and that is essentially the wash for the cost of AJ Green's franchise tag, which is about $18 million. So that they're counting that deal kind of a tit for tat thing, and that's how they're looking at that. But there are, if you unload Dre Kirkpatrick, does that then only go to the Trae Waynes, the Trae Waynes type of contract that they just signed? And I'm going to share something with you here for those of you joining us on the live video capture of this. I'm going to share Dre Kirkpatrick's contract with you, courtesy of Spotrac. You can see here the cap hit is just north, almost $11.1 million, and the dead cap is 2.8. So you see here, that 9.6 number at the end, 9.693,750. That's about what the total cap hit would be if for the cap savings rather would be if the Bengals were to get rid of Dre Kirkpatrick. So you've got this big contract you've given to Trae Waynes. Does that $9 million strictly go to that? And then and do the Bengals now kind of crawl into their shell a little bit? They went outside of their comfort zone, signing these two big deals to outside guys, giving out $90+ million worth of contracts to two players. Do they now say, okay, now the Dalton trade's going to be executed, we'll take a draft pick, we'll get that contract off the books, we're not going to really use that to another player, let's get Dre Kirkpatrick, either renegotiate his deal or get that contract off the books, and that's going to Trae Waynes, and then we kind of dabble here and there on tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 type of free agents, kind of fill out other spots on the roster, give depth, camp bodies, that sort of thing. I don't know exactly what they're going to do here. I do know that Dalton will not be on that contract, will not be on this team. I am very positive in saying that they will either release him or I think they will try and trade him. I think the reality is they're not going to – I don't know that they're going to be able to absorb that entire contract number to get also a high pick. But who knows? The Browns have made a couple of trades in the past, Carson Palmer's trade being one that really worked out for the team in terms of overall value. This could work out a similar way. We will see. But I would expect that, that $27 million between Dre Kirkpatrick and Andy Dalton would either be off the books or a lot of that would be off the books because of what occurred on Tuesday. I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Wait, I thought Mike Brown was cheap, 31+ million on two players and blah, blah, blah. Yes. You know what? We myself, others that you probably follow on other social media, Cincy Jungle members of our show, all that stuff. We were critical within the first day and a half of this team. If you've been a fan of this team for any length of time, I don't know how you can really blame us. This team has not really shown in the past. They have not shown the willingness to necessarily spend a lot of money in outside free agency. They kind of do the bare minimum. And after telling us they were going to spend more money, they sat real quiet for the first day and a half. Well, truth be told, and little did we know, they were working behind the scenes to try and get one of the top linebackers. They ended up getting one of, if not the top interior defensive lineman in this year's free agent class. And they got the number 4 cornerback, according to PFF analytics, the number 4 cornerback that was available on the free agent market this year. So they got 2 high quality players. Shame on us for being critical for a day and a half. I get it. But, we had been living in a fool me once, fool me twice, fool me a million times with Mike Brown. And, they said they were going to spend money. They didn't do it at the very onset. They tried apparently in the form of getting these linebackers, but they got a quality defensive lineman, a pretty quality cornerback, and things are looking a lot more brighter than they were just 24 hours from now. Things could be looking a lot different another 24 hours from now, as I mentioned with Dalton, with Kirkpatrick, that sort of thing. So we'll see what else they do. I do expect a couple of different moves. I do expect them maybe to start talking a little bit with Tyler Eifert. That could be something that's on the table, especially if that's a team-friendly deal. Nick Vigil, same kind of thing. I know that's not music to everybody's ears, given the fact that they missed out on Schobert and Littleton and others, Kwiatkowski, but that may be the well they have to dive into. So that's where we're at this point in time. The Bengals made some significant moves. I don't know that we will see the same level of moves in terms of acquisitions, potentially same level in terms of shedding contracts, which may be predictable. We'll see. We will definitely keep you updated on all that stuff, not only on this show, but on cincyjungle.com, where you can get all your news, opinions, analysis, videos like this, podcasts, all kinds of stuff. So keep it there. Keep it to our program. We appreciate you tuning in. We've got our weekly episode tomorrow. We are set to have Andre Parada. For those of you who don't know, he is a numbers guy, and he's a Bengals fan favorite on Twitter. We're set to have him on the program tomorrow. John Sheeran and I will be talking quite a bit about all of the happenings that have occurred the first 2 days, what may be happening tomorrow, and what's ahead. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Get the show on a number of different platforms. We appreciate the support. Have a great rest of your week. I know it's crazy out there, not outside of football. Just a PSA, don't panic, just remain calm, do what you got to do. We'll all get through this. Football's here at least, so we have something to talk about, and we'll continue to bring you all that coverage on this show and on CincyJungle.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the week.